most original talk radio station anywhere. We are LA Talk Radio at latalkradio.com.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Fouché Way radio show, live every Thursday at 1 o'clock p.m., sponsored by the nonprofit organization called Canine Hope for Improvement Program, where we hope to improve the quality of our dogs' lives by moving towards a no-kill society. The number here is 818-602-4929. Well, today I want to talk about the big picture. And what is the big picture? There are too many dogs in the shelter. And we need to empty out the shelters, one dog at a time, and be able to distribute literature and information through the media that will get knowledge to the people so they can stop dropping their dogs off at the shelter. Because once they're inside, that's a whole separate problem that I hope to talk about a little later in the show. You see, of all the hundreds of millions of species that have ever existed on this earth, the dog is the one that we should understand the most. And when I speak about learned and genetic behaviors, it's not the genetic ones that we really have problems with. In fact, if we were to graft it on a scale numbered 1 through 10 being worse, most dogs would be a 3 or a 4, which is normal. And it's funny that the thing that we have the most control over is what we pay the least attention to: learned behaviors. And why is that? Because we were never taught that it was important and relevant for raising a dog. We focused on training. And because of that, our dogs began to misinterpret our intentions. And what we are seeing and witnessing today is the effects of this misinterpretation. And so my first and second guest is an example of this very thing: a dog named Wesley and his owner named Dana. How are you today, Dana?
Good, thanks, Brandon. How are you?
I'm fine. You know, I want you to tell our listeners about your dog, Wesley. Give us his story from the beginning, because it's very interesting. You took a dog that was returned to the shelter a number of times. Can you kind of tell us about that?
Yes, I was just walking through. You know, I knew I had just finally moved to a place where I could adopt a dog, and had a little yard, and I visited the Santa Monica shelter and walked through, and immediately, you know, they say like loving dogs, when you know, and I saw Wesley, and I just said, you know what, that is, I don't know, there's something about him, I love that dog, and you know, that's my dog.
Right.
And I went over, and they told me that he had been returned and from the family, because he was microchipped, and nobody claimed him, so they believe he belonged to a family who wasn't claiming him. But they had to keep him for a hold period. And there were a number of people who were actually interested in adopting him already, and I was number 3 or 4 on the list. And I know now, volunteering in dog rescue, that's kind of unusual. So it's unusual that it worked out that Wesley and I came together. So someone else had adopted him, and I got a call about a week later from the shelter saying, hey, this dog has been returned a few times, wanted to see if you were, you know, we had you on your information here, wanted to see if you were still interested. And, you know, I jumped right out and I said, absolutely. And I went and I got him from the shelter and said, you know, I'm never going to leave you like the other families did. And then he tried to test my will daily after that.
You know, it's interesting. There is a video I want to put up on my Facebook page today. We didn't get a chance to. Your dogs in your wedding. You had your dogs in your wedding. And it's really quite shocking video, because you're in the photo session. This is a video now, listeners. And one of your dogs attacks the other dog.
Yeah.
And
that was not fun.
Yeah. It's not fun at your wedding. It's exactly. And so I want everyone...
you don't want to break up a dog's fight in Vera Wang.
Exactly. But, you know, you've been having some problems with him with aggression. And, you know, before you came to me, I'm sure you tried to get help. And how did that go? And, you know, how did you find out about me? Tell the story.
Well, so I tried a number of things, kind of basically training and tricks just to kind of manage his behavior and manage my life with him. And I was working at a film production company at the time, and you know, there was a writer and director duo who had both brought their dogs to you, and I said, well, you got to call Brandon. And so I'd given you a call, and this was probably after about 6 months or so of Wesley. He used to do, I mean, everything imaginable. We call him a flight risk. I stopped buying him crates at some point because he broke out of every single crate I've ever bought for him. He was like Houdini. We didn't have air conditioning in our house, and so if I'd open the window on a hot day, he would just jump through the screen, and I have had to like chase him down Fairfax in a towel. One time he escaped to LACMA. We said he's very, you know, very, very cultured. He wanted to check out an exhibit, I suppose, but we got a call one day that he was at LACMA. And he was extremely excitable around other dogs. He's a very high anxiety dog, and so I would just try and do little tricks at the beginning just to trick him into his crate, or you know, try to do little things to manage his behaviors rather than get to the root of the problem, which I was able to do once I came to you.
Mm-hmm. And now, were there other people that had referred you before you came, or was it just that?
Yeah.
There were.
The other people who had referred you to me.
Uh-huh.
Yes, they had come. One of them had an older poodle mix that he adopted, and I'm not sure what the first one's dog was, but they had come and they had just said, you know, I had met with one of them for lunch and brought my dog with me, and he said, Brandon will fix him. So I brought him to you, and since then I've referred other people to you who, a friend in Canada who had a dog who was almost going to be put down by the city from a 3 strikes law because he had bitten 2 people in the neighborhood, and they were able to, through the phone, you know, help figure out the root of the problem with you instead of just trying to stop it while it was already happening, which is, you know, one of the issues. And one of the issues I had, you know, Wesley's extremely friendly and social with people, but, you know, can be very dog selective. And when we introduced Charlotte, our second dog, into the family, it didn't go quite as smoothly as I had hoped, and he went after her on a number of occasions. And when we first adopted her, we weren't expecting to. I was taking him for a walk around to the Tar Pits, and Best Friends Animal Society was having their huge adoption fair, and so under the pretense of helping me with a dog that I convinced my husband Nick to come over, but I really had fallen in love with a puppy that was up for adoption there, Charlotte, and so we weren't expecting to introduce a dog, and so we did everything wrong. And we had this 8 pounds little, you know, black lab mixed puppy who looked like this sweet little angel, and they were, you know, seemed to be getting along fine, and then seemingly out of nowhere, he attacked her. And it's very scary when a 55-pound dog goes after an 8-pound dog, and, you know, those are both my babies. So that was terrifying. Yeah. And then that, you know, we were able to somewhat manage their behavior, and it came to a crossroads at our wedding when we were, you know, they seemed to be getting on okay. And, you know, as you saw in the video that we had sent to you, we were taking some photos, and Wesley was extremely stressed out, and Charlotte, our younger dog, is very submissive, and she was just kind of sitting there happily and looking out at the cameras, and all of a sudden you see on the video Wesley just attacked Charlotte. And I said to you, I don't understand. It's out of nowhere. She didn't do anything to provoke that, which is when you know, explained to me that it was, she didn't have to. She's the low man on the totem pole, and he's high anxiety. He was stressed out, and there was no one there telling him what his role was. So he didn't know what to do. There were all these people around, all this stimulate, there are so many like stimulants in everyone he knows and loves in the same area and all this excitement, and he took it out on her.
Yeah.
And so that's when we started working on his relationship with me, and since I've kind of exerted more of a leadership role with him where he looks up to me as the one in charge here, everything with their relationship has changed because he doesn't feel, since I wasn't taking charge of Charlotte or with him, he figured, well, I guess it's up to me to do something. I guess if she has bad behavior, if you're not gonna intervene, then I should bite her to punish her. So
Wow.
Since I've stepped up my role with them and gotten harsher with them, and harsh in the sense of discipline and not being mean to them, but showing them that I've got everything under control and that I'm the one who, I'm the one they should look to. If there's a dog on the street, I'm the one they should look to. Once I've got that under control, he hasn't, it's been over a year and we've had no incident with him and Charlotte. They can coexist, and even play together. And, you had said to me they don't have to be best friends. They need to cohabitate. And, that was a message I took. I don't force them together. Wesley needs his space.
Yeah, the
and
toleration.
when he wants to play, he plays. And if he doesn't, he goes off. And now, I've gotten him to go to his crate because I don't trick him into going into his crate now. I've told him this is where you need to be. I don't throw treats to trick him into going there. I've made it so, if I get angry with him and he knows that he did something wrong, he retreats to the crate as his safe place.
Wow.
So he knows that that's his place now. I don't have to trick him into going there.
That's powerful. I mean, listening to you, I feel it coming through the microphone. This is confidence.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember coming to your home and you were a nervous wreck.
I was scared to walk around the block.
Yeah.
We have kind of a cul-de-sac, and so there are a lot of owners just feel comfortable leaving their dogs off leash, and so we've been approached. I'll be walking both dogs and picking up a steaming bag of poop, and all of a sudden a third dog comes running after me as I look up, and I don't know, my hands are full, and I don't know which way to look, and I can't control my dogs. And that's happened on a number of occasions where, I've had to make the choice, well, I know Charlotte's the submissive one and she's going to want to retreat from that situation, so I let go of her, but then I have to worry about her getting hit in the street because she's running away from the situation while I break up Wesley and the other dog. I was terrified to walk around the block, and after breaking up a few traumatic dog fights, I started letting them out in the backyard instead of taking them for walks because I was so traumatized from breaking up these experiences. And it's scary to see the thing you love most in the world either getting attacked or attacking another dog.
Right.
And so, when you came over, you brought Wesley seemed to, he's seemed to ignore small dogs, and he has a poodle nemesis on the corner of the block, and so you brought both a big dog and a small dog to see how he'd react, and he was fine. They were off leash, and he sniffed them and let go while you were there around him, and that gave me the confidence to say, okay, he's capable of doing that. Let me try it. And so then I walked past him a few times with it, and at first he didn't pay attention to me, and the signal that you taught me that I found to be most helpful was that the second Wesley's ears perked up, he was excited. He was in a state of excitement. And once he's in that state, it's really hard to get him out of it. He sees another dog, he perks up, all of a sudden, it spirals, and he's twisting and twirling and pulling to try and get to the other dog. Now, if you see him perk up, oh, look, there's a dog in the other street, I turn around and I kind of give not like a low growl, but sort of like a, I don't even think about it.
Right.
And kind of I start stepping toward him till he steps back and is afraid of me. I kind of step in his direction. He steps back and is like, whoa, my bad. And I start walking. And so if I get him before he gets in the excited state and make sure his ears are flattened down and back, then it's easier for me to control him because he doesn't get to the state where he's beyond my control.
Now, you said something there. You said something there, and
sorry.
I want to interrupt you because it's very important. you said, the word fear. Now, in nature, I want everyone to understand what we're looking at. It's called submission. Humans have called it fear. And because dogs are created under a system of hierarchy, they need to submit to the one that has the authority. And by doing this, does it make you feel bad?
No, he's calmer. He's happier. It doesn't, he's not afraid that I'm going to hurt him. He's just kind of like, he just kind of realizes, oh, my mistake. I wasn't, I'm being, this is, you're telling me what I'm doing is wrong. It's a communication, and he's not afraid of me. He knows I'm not going to hurt him. He knows I'm his mom who loves him. It's not creating fear in his heart of me. He's not afraid of me as a person. It's, he realizes that he did something wrong, and I'm correcting his behavior. And it's much easier to, around the house too, after those walks and exerting that kind of where he submits and I exert this dominance over him. It's easier in the house too because he knows his role.
Right.
And so there's less acting out. It used to be, like I said, if I opened if I opened the window slightly, he'd just jump through the screen. If I come in at the door, I'd have to slide in to make sure he didn't go running out the door. Now, if I bring in the groceries, I could go back and forth to my car, and he's more interested in sniffing the groceries than taking a run for it. Right. Because he knows his boundaries, which was, another thing we had. We actually had to do thousands of dollars of work on the back fence because he kept finding ways, and I had to actually get into sweats and get on my hands and knees in the dirt to show my husband because he didn't believe me that it was possible for him to get through this fence, and I had to show him what I saw him do because we couldn't figure out how he kept doing it, and one day he did it before my eyes. He was obsessed, infatuated with the neighbors behind us and kept trying to escape to their yard. One day, we kept fixing the fence. He kept finding ways around it. I don't know how, but he did.
It becomes a competition for him after a period of time.
What's that?
It becomes a competition for him after a period of time.
Yeah.
He's challenging you.
Yeah, it is. It's a challenge.
Right.
It's okay, all right, you blocked it. Where's my next?
Yeah.
He's trying to sneak into the party next door, which literally they have a trampoline, and so he sees the excitement and is like mystified by it.
Right.
So he just wants to get to the trampoline. And so one day I took him outside, and I usually yell at him when he goes behind there. Instead of doing that, but by the bushes, by the back fence, instead of doing that, my husband Nick hid behind one of the taller bushes, and we waited for Wesley. Wesley started sniffing around one side of it. He started approaching the area where he normally will try to push through on the fence that we had just gotten repaired and didn't want to deal with again. And Nick jumped out and kind of roared and growled at him and scared him. And he hasn't attempted since. So that's a lot better than having to keep fixing the fence, is to get him to stop trying to get out there.
Well, what I want to say about that is very important, because this is what I call, when I say setting dogs up to fail. Dogs have to experience their environment in a way that they can learn, but they have to experience that environment. And so most dogs that live with us see the environment as though it's prey, and so they act like predators. So in this case, what your husband was able to do was the environment and him in it, he became the predator and made your dog feel like prey, and so the dog learned that that was not important to do. And so you've got a hold of this aggression with Wesley, and I'm going to bring in Kathy Chain, because she was somewhat in a situation like you, where she had both of her dogs that got into a fight. But before I do that, I just want to say very quickly, what would you say to people that were going through problems like what you were going through? Very quickly, what could you say?
I would just say that Wesley, when I first adopted Wesley, he was eating and chewing through everything, attacking other dogs. He was a ball and chain. And, since then I've fostered several dogs from the shelter and adopted out other dogs that I've pulled from the shelter and rescued. And I've had people call me and say, you know what, I'm giving up. This doesn't work out. And I say to them, Wesley is currently outside sunning on the patio, enjoying the day. He's the easiest, sweetest dog in the world. And Wesley, you were saying before, there's a level 1 through 5. Wesley's great with humans. Other than his sociability with humans, I would give him a 4.99. He was a disaster when I got him. And so if he can be now, he's the best dog in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't give up on your dog. If you adopt a dog from the shelter, you're taking them into your home and you're saying you're part of our family now, and you wouldn't give up on a member of your family. And so everything can be fixed. So don't give up on your dog.
Absolutely. All right. I want to bring in Kathy Chang. Kathy, how are you today?
I'm good, Brandon. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Now, I want to bring you in because you were having a problem with King and Gilbert. And if those listeners remember, you've been the trooper here. You've got, I don't know, a number of dogs that you've had coming in and out and fostering and what have you. And you ran into a little situation. And I know you mentioned to me one time before that, you don't want to come in front of the principal, but, this is a very important lesson. When I talk about rehabilitation and dealing with aggression with dogs all the time, and we can talk for hours and hours and days and months, and sometimes you will never get to some of the situations, and this is one of those things.
Right.
There's been a period of time that I have not really spoken to you, and one of your dogs, Gilbert, had torn his ACL.
Right.
And in tearing his ACL, I know that doctors say separate them from other dogs because they want to reduce the activity level.
Correct.
And from a medical standpoint, that is sound, and it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But from dealing with pack behavior, the moment that you start separating dogs within the same household, it becomes them against us. Okay? And
yes.
I have dogs that things happen to them all the time, and they're hopping on 3 legs, but they must be part of the pack. You just have to limit their activities. But the separation is what creates the stress, and the stress leads to aggression. And so what happened was your dogs had been separated for 5 weeks.
Right.
And I think it was your daughter had released King, who's a big guy. And tell us what happened. What happened?
Out front.
Tell us what happened.
She was, I wasn't there. She was taking Gilbert out front because part of the restriction information on the vet's instructions was leash only out of the crate to use the bathroom. So she was out front with him. It was dark, and someone else in the house that was not informed that she was out there opened the gate, and King came running out. And she honestly didn't even see him. She said it was just, boom, King T-boned Gilbert so hard that it knocked his collar off.
Mm-hmm.
And Gilbert corrected King, to which King responded by latching onto Gilbert's neck.
Mm-hmm.
And then my daughter reached and did the fall on the hand grenade, scooped Gilbert up to save the leg at all costs, and then, screaming for other people to come help break up the dog.
Okay, so you got it broken up.
Right.
And what happened
next? They broke it up, and everybody went their separate ways.
Okay. So more time has gone by, and now what
Correct.
happens? What happens?
And then I was in the backyard with Gilbert, and again, the door was opened, and King came out, and I turned around and looked, and by the time I said, oh, shoot,
Mm-hmm.
here's King, and he's on Gilbert again and latched on.
Mm.
And so we, separated them, and I was not in a happy mood about the accident that had just occurred,
Mm-hmm.
because trying to keep this $4,000 leg from getting injured.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, again, separated everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started to notice King's behavior became sort of stalking
Mm-hmm.
when he would see Gilbert.
Right.
And that was a frightening thing to see, because the dogs had been in a pack, it's got 5 of them, and it has been lovely and wonderful and rolling along. And to see a dog change to a predator was unnerving for me.
Isn't this interesting that two dogs, or whatever number of dogs, can be together, and then all of a sudden this behavior starts? Now, this is it's a common problem. It happens a lot with multiple homes, and it's never really been talked about in a way that it's understood what was happening. And that's why I wanted to have you on to explain to our listeners, when they have things like this happening, what's going on, okay? And in this situation, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because it sounds like many situations that I've had in the past. When you have a dog like this, and I understand the King is a big dog, but
yes, he's a bit nasty.
I don't believe that King is the alpha of this pack, though. Okay?
No, not at all.
All right. So what happens is dogs are always climbing. Their life is based on hierarchy, and they do not believe in equality. That is a misplaced ideology in the dog's world. And so they're always climbing. And what happens when you bring a new pack together, and they're interacting and they are doing what we consider to be playing, they are really trying to determine who is more dominant than the other without actually fighting. So the hormonal level only goes up so far. It's just like kids that wrestle or box, and they say, well, we're just playing, we're boxing, and when they finish, they're able to determine who is stronger, who is more dominant than the other. You understand? That's the comparison. And what happens is, if that has not been settled, and usually in a case like this, let's say Gilbert would be the one that would be disciplining and dominating King.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct, and that's what he had been doing. And I realized, Brandon, after we talked yesterday, that King's only been in this pack for 2 months before Gilbert's surgery.
Yeah, it's a new thing. And so the whole pack order has not been established yet. It was established on a physical level, meaning the wrestling and the dominating and making them bow and things like that physically, which is what Gilbert was doing to King. Okay?
Right.
But the mental aspect of it was not complete. The physical was done, but the mental was not. And that's when you start, when Gilbert looks at him and he moves in another direction, or he backs away from something, or he does something first before King is able to do it. You just subtly see that thing takes place. Okay? And that was not completed yet. And because you were in the mental phase of this is when the accident took place where he tore his ACL. And usually when dogs tear their ACL, it's because they're running around and jumping and flipping. And if they're not on an agility course, meaning if it's not something that we are making them do, and they are doing it on their own, it's a display of power for the other dogs to see the agility that he has, the power that he has, the ability that he has, the determination that he has, the alpha that he is. Do you understand?
Oh, I do, yeah.
Okay, so he's flipping around and boom, he has this accident, he tears his ACL, he's finished with the physical domination, it's time to do the mental domination, and now you separate him. So it wasn't complete. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And so now when you bring the two together after being separated, Gilbert becomes the dominant one because it wasn't completed. Do you understand?
Right. You mean King?
King becomes the dominant one to challenge him because the mental part wasn't completed and because he's injured.
Right.
He's weak. So he took full advantage of that. Now, the reason that we know that King is not the alpha is because the other dogs still dominate him. They remember what happened before Gilbert was sick.
Correct.
So they're still doing what they were doing. But it's Gilbert was the one who had to complete it.
Okay.
You get it?
I do.
Yeah. And sometimes this happens when anything can happen to a dog, and we start to separate them, or during that mental dominant phase that they have to go through, they get an ear infection or something happens to their skin, and we start rubbing and paying more attention to that dog in the presence of the one who's trying to climb, and then we start to distance the relationship because we're interfering, you know. The dogs are saying, well, I'm not really sure. I believe that I should be in this position, but you're being submissive to this dog that I feel that I should be above. You got it? And because you don't realize what's happening, you're not able to take that alpha position because you're just trying to protect him. You're trying to love him, and you know the money that you spend and all of that is involved, right?
Exactly, and the vet instructions.
And the instructions of the vet from the vet's perspective.
Right.
If you were to be at my place, you might see dogs hopping around on three legs everywhere. and you know, and what happens is they say, oh, okay, you're injured, but you are still maintaining your position. And it's just that simple, because we could become so submissive with our dogs because they're injured to show them that we love them, that even in that display of physical love is looked at from the dog as a subordinate position, which causes even that dog to rise in its dominant state of mind, and the other pack members that are watching begin to climb too because they notice that there's weakness involved. You see?
Yeah.
And that's why that's why you separate the dogs to do whatever it is you have to do to them, and then you bring them back into the pack.
Got it. Never in a million years would I have come to this.
It's very, very important. You know, and this also takes place in very early ages of our dogs when the inoculation period has to take place, and doctors say that we should separate our dogs during the developmental time of their minds. When the socialization phase is taking place, they're separated, okay? And then when we try to reintroduce them to dogs, things are not proper. Problems begin, and because we don't understand that this is taking place, we don't know how to insert ourselves within that moment to right the wrong. Okay? And that's why a lot of dogs, after the shots have given and they've been separated from dogs and they try to bring them back, they're not brought back properly, and then this problem continues until the dog is grown and beyond. Okay? And then sometimes we'll say, well, I don't know what's wrong with him. That's genetic. Well, in a way it is, because it happens so closely at a point during this socialization phase that it can be considered to be genetic, but no, it was learned by us. We taught them that by separating them. Okay? It's a big problem with separation. I mean, I separate dogs at my place because I need to know this kind of information when someone else is having this problem. And so I've seen this many times. That's how I know that. It's always us against them. And then when you bring them all together, you'll see them have this look on their face like, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be on the other side of the fence, right? And then they all have this amazed look like, what's going on here? See, they believe it. And so that's what was happening there. And Diana went through that, but they got it together. But in this case, because Gilbert's leg is still in the position, you know, you're a little weak with this. And so now you are now taking on that dominant role with both dogs. And now that you're doing that, you will see that to control a pack, you have to make them feel the same way at the same time for the same reason. And are you seeing that now? The submission in both dogs?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, we're starting to see it now. Yeah, I can tell you too. Honestly, the deterrent, you know, as far as moving along quickly, will be me with my fear.
Well, yeah, you know, fear. You know, that's why I always say that fear is a good thing. When someone tells me I'm not afraid, then I become afraid because, I mean, really, you know, in my line of work, the fear. That's why I don't think fear is a negative thing. I have fear also, but having that fear allows for me to take precautions. I have back doors. Right. If this happens, this is what I'm going to do. If that happens, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, I'd be silly to say that I didn't have fear when you release 30, 40 dogs that were killers. Or,
right.
Do you understand? Then you've got to truly understand those dogs. You have got to be dealing with that fear in a way that it's going to work for you. You know?
Right.
And you know now, this is your big fight. You know this is not an easy thing.
Right.
You know, I remember you said to me, I don't think you get paid enough.
No. I said that after I pulled one dog off the other. I sat down and thought, he does this 24/7. The man does not get paid enough.
Yeah, it's truly a labor of love, you know, and with situations like this, you know, of course, I want to bring in Marla, which is our attorney, to talk about some things. But I want to say this, that this problem that you're having, this problem that Diana was having, these are the problems that get our dogs returned to the shelter. Okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because we just can't take it, especially when you have more than 2 dogs. But the important part, and what I'm trying to do here, and the big picture that I'm talking about, is that this information is concrete. You can stand on it. It's instant, and it has been tried and tested to be true and more powerful than anything that I have come in contact with in all the years that I have worked with dogs in the field of aggression. Diana has gotten instant results. You have gotten instant results. You are now going through a phase in this aggression between your 2 dogs that you saw were able to play with each other. You have saw this emotional, hormonal side that had caused you now to rise in your education of working with dogs.
Right.
And after this is done, you're going through it now. After this is done, you're going to say, wow, I really understand what's happening now.
Yeah.
And then once you get to that level, there is another level. And we don't need to talk about it until that takes place.
And I'll call you, Brandon.
Exactly. And that's fine. And, you know, this brings me to, Marla, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. This brings me to some information that I want to come up with. You know, it's like, you know, dogs are dying at an alarming rate for behavioral issues as well as other issues, okay? But the people that are turning their dogs into the shelter are generally doing it because of behavioral reasons, okay? And we need to stop that. I mean, the big picture is we need to get this information out. And that's what's happening here on this radio show with the Fouché Way people that are dedicated and the rescue organizations that are dedicated with working with me and working with each other. And we need the world and the shelters to start working with this philosophy and understand that aggression is just the highest form of communication. It is not the boogeyman. It is a dog operating out of stress. And so when we don't understand this, then we start doing crazy stuff that kind of reminds me of like a Ponzi scheme, where we start taking numbers of dogs out of the shelters and transporting them to other cities. I don't understand that. I mean, I've called different cities all around because I talk to people all over the world, and I asked them, is there any shortages of dogs in New York or Chicago? And they say, no, we've got our share. We're packed too. So I don't understand where these dogs are going. What's happening with that?
Well, transports have sort of become, you know, obviously it makes a big difference for the dogs that are transported. You know, you know, they get out of the shelter, at least out of that particular shelter. It has become a sort of, I don't know, fairly common or popular thing to do in the last several years. It's generally done among, you know, a lot of fanfare and sort of publicity and media and whatnot. And so there's a lot of information, or a lot of sort of interest in it and attention paid to it while it's happening. But I think, as you said, I don't know of any city or county or place, at least in North America, that has a shortage of dogs, that is saying, gosh, you know, our shelters are completely empty, please send us more.
Yeah.
I have not heard of that yet. some places may not have as many maybe small dogs as other places, but the transport thing is it's not a sustainable model, and it's not a long-term solution. It's really not a solution at all to overcrowding or anything in shelters. It's certainly not cost-effective. It's very expensive, and it's sort of a Band-Aid cure for a larger problem. And it tends to, because of the positive publicity that's put on it, it tends to really sort of mask a lot of the other issues going on.
Well, a lot of people are dropping, a little Fluffy off at the shelter thinking that they're going to get a good home,
Yeah.
And that's just not the case necessarily,
No, not necessarily. No.
And then some people I've even understand that they're lying, not thinking that this is a guaranteed death sentence.
What happens sometimes, and it's not that uncommon, is somebody will come into a shelter, they have a dog, and they just, for whatever reason, generally, as you said, because of behavior reasons, they don't want to deal with it anymore. They just don't want to deal with it. They don't know what to do, how to do it, and they just want to get rid of the dog. But they don't want to feel like they've really abandoned the dog and that they're really quite lousy people or whatever. So to make themselves feel better, and to make themselves look better to the pound or the shelter people, they say, this dog bit my child in the face. Or they make up a story and sort of exaggerate what happened.
Well, look.
But what they don't understand is they're signing the dog's death warrant
exactly,
when they do that.
Because that's what they're going to put on the kennel cage.
That's what they're going to say. This dog is aggressive. We have to kill it. Okay.
So what this means is that the lack of information that people have contributes to their dogs being killed. And this leads me, to the cost factor. And, this is very earth-shattering to me that you have some figures here that I want our listeners to understand about what it costs to actually kill a dog. Can you kind of tell us what that is?
Yeah, I mean, from the records that I have and from a lot of the research I've done into various shelters over the last few years and just, looking at a lot of their different records and costs and whatnot, I've come up with a figure of about $100 per animal, roughly. It's hard to tell because there are many variables that come into this. It depends on whether the animal is killed in-house, if you will, in the shelter by their staff or if it's done at a veterinarian. But generally speaking, when you consider all of the costs, which is transportation maybe to and from a veterinarian's office, the actual medications, the staff time, and whatever. When you factor it all in, I think safely, roughly, you can come up with about $100 per animal.
Okay.
That's not including, though, that's just the outgoing money. What that does not include is the lost revenue. There's, each animal, if it's looked at correctly, is an opportunity for a shelter to generate revenue. And the adoption fees are typically $100, $125. So when you forego those adoption fees, then you have a net loss per animal of the $100 to kill it, plus the missed opportunity for adoption. So you're talking about more like $200, $250 per animal, and that's not a very good business model.
Wow.
That's not a very cost-effective thing to do.
So what does that break? What are we looking at on a year?
When you look at it on when you extrapolate those numbers across the entire country, a sort of commonly accepted number for the animals, for dogs and cats killed in this country on an annual basis, it's about 5 million, which is a lot. That's a lot of animals. When you take that number and you multiply that out by $100, that's $500 million spent nationally just to kill these animals.
Oh, my gosh.
There has to be a better way to do this. That is not a very productive use of money.
Oh, my God.
That money would be much better spent on programs like educating the public on how to retain their animals. If they knew they had access to information that would give them a simple, easy solution to how to deal with their dog's behavior, I think they would take it. I know I did.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because, your problem, and of course it's your problem, but it was a monumental problem in your life.
With my dogs?
With your dogs,
Yeah, it was.
And I know you're not a person that would give up on your dogs or turn them into the shelter, But the kind of problem that you were having, someone that, maybe having a little more problems than others or a little more stress in their life, thinking that, this is not going to get any better. The best thing for me to do is to get rid of this dog, and it's going to find a wonderful home, and, I'm going to rid my problem, right? Mm-hmm. You met me, and I was able to help you, and you saw how quickly you were able to solve your problem.
Yeah.
But now,
if I had not met you and gotten the information that you have, if you had not, we would probably now be living in a situation where a lot of people are, where the last thing I want is to give up on my dogs, but I'm sort of a hostage to my dog's behavior, mm-hmm. where, we can't leave the house, and maybe they have to be separated, one in one room and one in another room, and, sort of walled off from each other. And I think a lot of people are in there, and I think, they may not have the ability to tolerate that, or for whatever reason to live like that, and it's not fun.
Right.
But if I had access to you and your information, which is, has changed everything within minutes. What you told me clicked in my brain, and I was able to make those changes just instantaneously.
And it's really important because, a lot of people, I always say, we always want to know how to do this and how to do that. They want to show me what you do, what you did. And I try to direct them to the concept of the information first, because mm-hmm. if you can understand why you must be doing something from the concept of the creator of the creature itself, which is nature. In other words, the genetic aspect of this creature, what was it born to do? Nature knew how to raise its creatures. But when we look at it from the concept of training is forcing a dog to do something that they already know how to do, right? But it's not controlling the behavior. And we think that if we can physically put our dogs in positions, that somehow the mind is going to follow. And my philosophy is if we can get into our dog's head mentally, emotionally, socially, then the body will follow. And that's why when you hear the clients on the radio talk about how their dog seems to be calm and they seem to be happy, you can only be calm and happy in life, even as a person, after you have gotten the emotional things that you need as a person, as a dog first. Then you can start adding in the things that you would like for them to have,
Yeah.
And so,
and in our house, I know it was the information. For me, it was a simple matter of you giving me the information because my dogs were not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It was me.
Yeah, you were symptoms. The symptoms.
Yeah, and they were just they were doing what they're supposed to do, and they were doing the best they could given what they had to work with, which was me.
Yeah.
And until I could change my role in the whole process, they didn't know what they were really supposed to do because I didn't know what I was supposed to do.
Right, and I'm glad you said that because they have the ability to lead as a leader or to follow as a subordinate. So if you're not the proper leader, right, then what kind of example do they have? And so,
in my case, it wasn't great.
You have said something a number of times that it's so funny, and I hope I get this right, but maybe you can step in. But you've mentioned that, give that dog to me. I can mess him up. How did that go? That was so funny.
Oh, I always tell you I can. Oh yeah, I'm a dog ruiner. I can ruin any dog, any dog, any breed. No problem.
But really, that's funny. But I mean, now.
I know now.
You know now that this is not something that we're talking about. It's going to take the lifetime of the dog. It's not going to take 6 months. It's not going to take 2 months. It's not going to take a month. Sometimes this can be done within an hour or less. Mm-hmm. It's how effective you use and how concrete this information is for you to understand. And it's just like anything else in life. If we have the knowledge to do better, I think that we would have. But if we don't have the knowledge, if it's not given to us, if we've only had training, if our minds just click in terms of training, which is tricks, okay, then we can never deal with what I love to say dogs are, superheroes.
Yeah.
If there's ever a superhero, it's a dog who can smell body parts underwater, track people for miles, tell if you're having seizures or heart attacks, can smell bed bugs, can answer out to any ingredient within soup, find your keys. I mean, that is a superhero quality. And we're still dealing with that creature from the concept of sit, stay, come, and heal. And we're going to the moon now? You can see each other on the cell phones. Right.
My one dog is, I mean, she's her natural energy level is insane. And she graduated, really with high honors in her typical training class, sit, stay, come. But the net result was she turned me into a human Pez dispenser.
There we go.
And all I did was just sort of give out treats. And she was a lot smarter than I am. She would just, try these tricks on me without me telling her, and then I would give her a treat. So she had me beautifully trained, but that didn't do anything to resolve her behavioral issues. That just sort of masked the behavioral issues.
Marla, oh my gosh, and we're the time is rolling. We're already at this point. It's never enough time. I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank Diana. I want to thank Kathy Chain. We want to stay on top of that. Marla, I want to thank you too for coming on and giving us information about these dogs being killed. We got to do something about it. This is The Big Picture. Tune in next Thursday at 1 o'clock at the Fouché Way radio show for another interesting conversation. Thank you very much.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.